Everybody back. Okay, we go. I'd like to welcome everybody back to the ad hoc on electronic communication devices. I'd like to turn it over to Lieutenant Turner to catch us up on the change with the overview of what's been changed to this point.
Oh, thank you, Commissioner, and thanks for everyone and those of us who are or those who are joining us. I'll go ahead and share my screen here. So you should have seen on the Commission's website there is a PDF which has both the clean version and a red line version. And the one I'm sharing actually has a few other edits that I've made because thanks to the Vice Chair Peterson sent some edits after we had already posted. So thank you, Ronnie, for posting. And but I'll call those out where they exist. So just a few things that you can notice if you see any red text there. I changed, so we made sure that members were called out both for sworn and professional staff. Chair Howell, you talked about that at one of our previous meetings. Mm-hmm. Got a few some input from our professional staff right around like taking out plain clothes, because obviously professional staff wear normal clothes all the time. They don't wear uniforms. They also don't necessarily have a person who is acting as in their rank. So if a supervisor or manager leaves as professional staff, it's not as not to say not as critical, but we may not necessarily have that person have someone else act in their rank. It just might be their superior who sort of fills in. So we added that to make sure that our professional staff managers who need to have their phones, that when they do take holiday, that they can safely leave their phone, behind, enjoy their time off, et cetera. So as we get into more substantive edits, so on-duty use of the work cell phones, and we struck this word primarily last time, so it reads that the work cell phones are meant to allow members to conduct their official department business. And then I added in here a pretty stark reminder in bold that members are reminded that work cell phones, because of their nexus to the job-related activities, may be the subject of public records requests, subpoenas, and discovery requests. This could be even, that they likely will be, right? It depends on, of course, the assignment. Some people will go, their entire career without doing something notable enough that they are subject to public records requests, subpoenas, or discovery. But other people, depending on their assignments or something, like, for instance, in the policy unit, we get public records requests constantly. So that is something that really drives home the point that these are work devices that are meant for work.
Should we discuss these sort of points as we kind of get to them? Because I was going to suggest that we make it even a little bit more explicit and say, in effect, that what you write and say or whatever can be made public or something. Because I mean, subject to public records requests, yes, but I think we need to just spell out that they can be required to be turned over, and the content and statements or whatever and videos can be. Well, we can work on the language of it, but this is great to put it out there. Yeah, contents maybe, yeah.
Yeah, made public.
Yeah.
Okay.
Great.
Note here to just come back.
Yeah, we can pretty up the language or something, but to just make it really clear that what you're doing while you're laughing, giggling, and everything, or sending jokes and everything else, it all may end up in the papers.
Right. That is a good response. Yeah, Captain, I see your head up. Okay.
Sorry about that, Joe. Yeah. So Commissioner Harbor Forte, yeah, I agree with you. I actually was talking with Lieutenant Turner earlier about that, and I was even trying to see if it made sense to even strike out the may be subject, and just put they are.
That's
Right?
true. They
Yeah.
are subject.
There could be exemptions if it falls under, certain, investigations and things like that. But for the most part, they are subject to public records. There's no real question about it. The
Yeah.
government code allows for certain exemptions, and if it falls under that, then you'll deal with that. But for the most part, they are subject. So I think that's maybe even speaks to the spirit what you're trying to get to, these clear lines that, hey, this is not to be messed around with.
Yeah. Okay.
Mr. Farmer's hand is up as well.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, no, just to piggyback on that, I just would say maybe just they are part of the public domain, something to that effect.
Okay, that one might be, because like the captain said, there are some things, so I don't want us to write into policy something that is not necessarily true, because we are working with a lot of like legitimate criminal justice information, private information. I don't want to say that these are public domain, right? Because we're talking about people's livelihoods, that, people who have been arrested, things like that, right? Especially information before conviction, all those type of things that I don't necessarily want to say that they are public, domain necessarily. But I get where you're coming from, that basically this is the members work for the public, they work for the government, and this is a government asset.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm just saying that they could be, but it doesn't have to be said like that either.
Okay.
If I could just chime in for a minute, I think Captain Holmgren hit the nail on the head when he took out the may be and replaced it with are, because there's no doubt with there may be, there is doubt as to whether or not, this information is public, and to add that stronger language so that they are certain that, barring any exemptions, anything on your cell phone is subject to disclosure.
Okay. All right. So yeah, if we could maybe just come back to this last sentence about devices, but let's see.
And maybe publicly disclosed or something like that.
Mhm.
Maybe use the word disclosed. Maybe publicly disclosed. That ought to give everybody pause.
Okay. All right. Okay, let's see. You know
Excuse
what?
me. Oh, excuse me. One thing. We just got a note from the vice chair that we should introduce everybody on the screen.
Yeah.
Ad hoc committee chair, Commissioner Howell.
Okay, so just want me to just go down and just introduce everybody, or just
Sure,
call people out?
yeah, I think
Okay.
just the names of everybody on the Zoom. And
Okay, so with us today is myself, Rudy Howell, Commissioner Rudy Howell. There's Commissioner Brenda Harbin Forte, Lieutenant Joe Turner, Director Kiona Suttle, Captain Roland Holmgren, and Commissioner Marcia Peterson.
And we have Mr. Omar Farmer.
Oh, yeah, Mr. Omar Farmer too. Sorry about that.
Okay. So then there was some discussion, right, around the use of these devices, understanding that we're giving a, not just sort of like a Nokia cell phone, like make calls, to and from or something like that, but a small computer, a mobile computer to our staff, and understanding that, the way that people in offices use their computers. But at the same time, we want to make sure that these are for business use. So members are encouraged not to conduct any personal business on their work phone, and any actions taken using the phone must comply with this policies and its prohibitions. And then I reference back specifically to those ones in section C that we'll go through. Noting that any, and I struck out on duty because that allowed for, like using the phone off duty and then escaping this. So any personal use of a work cell phone. So before it said calls or messages, right? expanding that to use. Any personal use of the work cell phone shall be kept to a minimum and be brief. And then kept those example, the first two, but then struck the third. This is these are examples, but that third one was one that it was in the previous policy. That policy was from 2009, when I think cell phones were not as ubiquitous. The personal use and people having their own personal cell phone was not as ubiquitous. And I think that's going to be the exception rather than the rule. And so not having that as an example is probably stronger. But yeah, your thoughts.
Good.
Yeah, I like that. I like taking that out because it just makes it stronger. So yeah, that's good.
Okay. Let's see. So continue here. So one that you haven't seen yet, that so Vice Chair Peterson noted around the work-related use of these electronic devices. And in here, this is kind of a catch-all, but it's mainly focused on our computers, right? The desktop and laptop computers that we issue. So like any other business, most of our staff, if they're at a workstation, they have a computer. Some of them, like me or others who need to work in sort of out and about, will have a laptop or something like that. But so I just changed this because Vice Chair Peterson noted that this first line, members may use electronic devices assigned to them or the unit for work-related functions, didn't really have the same kind of effect as where we talked about the work phone. So instead, I just used the same language from the work cell phones. Electronic devices assigned to members or to their unit are meant to allow members to conduct official department business. Then understanding that, like any other office, we will have people who use the desktop or laptop computer assigned to them, and this is the second part, for appropriate personal business while on break. We understand, and I'll be the first to admit, during my breaks, I look at the news, I look at the New York Times, I keep up with what's going on. Sometimes I'll look for a hike for the weekend or something like that. I do feel pretty good about this, mainly because our computers are really well administered by the city's Department of Information Technology. So as you all know, right, being a government agency, the Department of Information Technology oversees all these computers and can do a lot of looking back at actions. They flag things and things like that. So I feel pretty good about the way that the Department of Information Technology can catch people who are doing bad things and prevents them in the first place. So there are blocks on our internet and things like that. So that I feel pretty good about. But your thoughts?
I would just, one little word. I wonder if we should say that there are electronic devices assigned to members or to their unit are provided to allow members to conduct. The Vice Chair.
I agree. I just want to make it as clear as possible that is the reason you have.
Exactly.
lines.
Exactly. And it was going to say, we don't need for the purpose of. So, yeah, to the unit are provided to allow members. That's the only reason we're giving them to you, so that you can conduct official department business.
Okay. All right. So another one that you haven't seen in here. So the Vice Chair noted in this, when we get into the section around prohibited activity, noted that this line in here about using their electronic devices, personal cell phones, etc., to the point of distraction from their performance of duty or interference with their safety, that was vague, especially around point of distraction. So I actually took the language directly from our manual of rules, which actually has a section on that. It's 356.8, and took that the same language straight from there.
Oh, that's great.
And so again, Vice Chair Peterson, that this also solves a problem around like meet and confer something, because this is a rule that people are already expected to follow.
Very good. Thank you.
Yeah,
That's great.
okay. Use of the cell phones while driving. So if you notice, I added this line here. specifically exempting use of the cell phone as a GPS navigation tool or to play work appropriate music while driving is specifically exempted from this prohibition. So we did have several of our staff come up and express some worry, especially around the use of the work phone as a GPS. And they noted that, so we do not issue GPS. We do not have GPS on the in the cars or on the mobile data terminal. So many of them will use a work phone to navigate to calls, especially ones where they are not used to, in places they're not used to going. So at new addresses or places that we don't necessarily have calls that frequently, I'll see that. And so that's one of the things that I added. And then another thing that staff mentioned was that they do play appropriate music, very similar to their office. The patrol vehicle is their office. As I use my computer and play some sort of soothing music throughout the day, as the officers would be expected, again, work appropriate. And so we put that in there, understanding that we also do have many policies that would that they would be subject to if they were playing something that was inappropriate. Okay, let's see. So added here, another just sort of technical thing, but one of the officers noted this, that we do need to have our staff available to use their personal phones. And so I think this will be more on our side, telling the chief that this is one of the exceptions that we'd like to have to be able to approve timesheets. So Director Sutherland is, just because we do have those staff that sometimes, with the time card issues, it's important to get our staff paid, even if our people don't necessarily have their work phone and they're on their time off. Let's see. And then, so if you remember, we had the subject matter expert. He kind of talked about and asked to elaborate a little bit more around this last part here about members not monitoring or operating work-related social media accounts from their personal cell phones, and just to talk a little and explain a little bit more. So I added in there the examples, the forward-facing social media accounts that represent the department, or the investigative social media accounts that they use for their work, that those should not be on their work cell phones, or their personal cell phones, excuse me. And then the prohibition also to get the spirit of what he was saying at the last meeting, it doesn't preclude members from engaging in non-work related social media contacts with other members using their personal devices, like being friends on social media, connecting with hobbies, etc. But again, reference back to our social media, personal social media policy, so that we don't miss a chance to reinforce that we've already passed, and some of those things around personal social media. Okay. Let's see. So added a link here. So every time I reference any of the department general orders, anything, I'll usually add a link, so that, and it's to the public link. So these policies, just for your information, anytime any policy goes through the commission, I treat it as all of our policies are public, but any of these, they get posted to our department website, and then members of the public can click these links and they will go to other forward-facing policies that are also on our website, so they can view them. So this is, like something like Tanetta Thompson was speaking about, transparency to the public. Again, this allows people, both the members and the public, to sort of navigate through the policies and see what things are referencing. We'll do have that there. So
Tennis, you
yes.
have a note, you have a footnote.
I do.
Might want to highlight and fill in.
Okay. Yeah, I am going to. I just want to make sure, because I know we're still working on that policies with employee relations and Director Appleyard. So as soon as I get 100% on that, I will, because as you remember from the use of force policy, right, there were a few things that came back to the commission from the meet and confer, and they made a couple changes. So I don't want to necessarily put the final in, but thank you for reminding me to highlight that one, so don't miss it. So C7, accessing inappropriate materials. So Vice Chair and other members who remember, you asked about, well, will this have some impacts, right? And Captain Holmgren, noted that we already have rules that cover these things, but I added specifically, so this manual of rules here, that's a hyperlink. We'll link to that public facing manual of rules, but then to the manual of rules sections that actually cover this kind of behavior. All right, so specifically referencing these things already. And as you can see, most of them have multiple manual of rules sections that could be violations if they were to engage in this type of behavior on their work cell phone or electronic devices. Another thing is you'll see a small footnote here next to hate group, racist, or anti-government material. So one of the SMEs kind of talked about, maybe could we expand or talk about that a little bit? So what I did is pull that definition from D18, and that's another one we'll need to highlight and just make sure it doesn't change at all in any slight wording, but pulled that definition that we talked about, as you may remember, around extremist content. All right. And so the same, using those same thing, it's an opportunity to talk about it again, right? It's an opportunity to reinforce that sort of content that is extremely problematic, that will get people, in trouble, lose their jobs, is unacceptable community, and then just brings it back and references back to the other policy. All right. So we get into kind of the talk about inspections, auditing, and the department's inspection plan. So this section was pretty well revamped. And so I'll kind of talk over, and then maybe we can have a more general discussion about people's thoughts overall. So I'll go through all the sections of section D, and then we can talk a little bit about how either specific sections or the overall kind of idea of the plan, or et cetera. But one of the things we noted, definitions, right? Really giving a clear definition of what each thing was. So inspection, around something like the subject matter expert talked about, that sort of light touch to expand our scope of looking at these things. Audits, where we're talking about using maybe some digital forensic tools, all right, to extract the entirety of the data stored on the phone. So that is a much larger scope.
Can I ask you, what do you have possibly including deleted? Just say including deleted data.
I say that because I don't, it's mainly because I don't know the technical of whether that is actually true. Not that we can control whether or not, but I don't want to say it does include it, and then someone who understands this technology say, oh, that's not true. Right. So
you can get deleted data from electronic devices.
Or
With something that many crooks learn to their horror, and cheating husbands and everything else learn to their horror. It's kind of like, oh my goodness, I deleted that. It's like, no, nobody.
Oh Lord.
I should say cheating spouses. Okay.
Yes. Thank you. Yes.
Or partners.
Partners. Yeah. Cheating partners. So yeah. Well, I think the definite, if it's available, that would be, then it's something we will look at. So yeah, I think taking it out, because if it's available, we'll look at it. Of course, if it's gone, then it's gone.
Well, would you want to highlight it and double check with your tech crew, or?
I will. You know what? That's a good idea, just because also, I'd kind of like to know a little bit more. And I think this is
because if there's something that tightens it even more,
right,
definitely deleting possibly, but if there's even more that we can say.
And they will. There are plenty of cases, including court cases, where people try to delete things to their great horror and embarrassment and stuff. It's right. It's kind of like, okay, it would take a while to get it, but the technology is there.
Right. Yes, Mr. Farmer.
Yeah, I would think that would be a key part of the policy, to make sure that the devices are audited prior to any sort of losing the information date. And like Commissioner Harper-Forte stated, you can definitely access deleted content. It just kind of depends on maybe who is doing the monitoring work for your phones. They should be able to tell you that.
Okay. Yeah, it's definitely, and you can see the limitations of my knowledge about the technology, but it's not meant to limit our ability to look at whatever is there. It's just, I want to make sure that I don't oversell what the technology can do. So the extent of what the technology can do is what we will look at.
Yeah.
Okay. And then talk about searches, all right, a focused attempt to find something. So it did differentiate between inspections, audits, which are, understand. And one of the things about this policy is to let our staff know that, many of these are going to be suspicionless inspections and audits, all right, where it is by policy that their phone will be inspected or audited, as opposed to a search where there will be typically a reason why it is that we are doing so. And then, so talked about the right of the department to inspect or audit these work cell phones at any time, work cell phones and electronic devices, that they not be arbitrary, capricious, or harassing, not based on personal bias or animus. And then that supervisors and commanders may conduct inspections of the work phones of their members in their chain of command.
So can I ask, it looks like you have excluded searching the phone.
So I have not. It's just that typically the searches of the phones, when we talk about that, I don't want to necessarily say that the supervisors and commanders will do the searches, because that's when we talk about misconduct, we have a specific way that a supervisor or commander would need to reference that to internal affairs and not necessarily start the investigation on their own.
So
Right.
let me ask you this. So the first paragraph though should say that the department may inspect, audit, or search work cell phones and work electronic devices. And then and the inspections, audits, or whatever, supervisors and commanders may conduct inspections or audits of the work phones. So it looks to me like although you have defined search, you have said that the department can't search, and under certain circumstances they can search.
Right. So there is further below, there is where it says that the department will search, and there is a reasonable belief that so in addition to the inspections and audits, that the department may also search work cell phones and work electronic devices when there are reasonable grounds for suspecting that the search will reveal evidence of work-related misconduct or criminal misconduct. So the department can inspect and audit these phones at any time. They can search. And
Okay,
this is,
all right.
yeah,
right.
so this is sort of to differentiate between these that are overarching sort of I don't want to use the word dragnet, but an idea where because we are planning this idea that these phones are public, anything could happen, and one of these inspections or audits could happen, versus when a misconduct investigation is going on, then the department has the ability to search. So yeah, I saw Mr. Farmer and then Captain Holmgren.
I just wanted to ask a question. Did you take out the frequency of auditing the phones, the 2-year frequency for doing that?
Yeah, so I'll speak to that. That was actually the 2-year frequency of the audit by what we had, the Office of Inspector General, and instead was so that was an audit of the policy compliance which is what the now named Office of Internal Accountability. But that was an issue around their capacity, and also maybe if that is something that would be with maybe the Police Commission's OIG, right, to look at our inspection plan, which I'll talk about in a second.
Is that, just to follow up on that, something you said, is that a police department the office you just mentioned? Are they police officers?
No, they are not police officers. The Office of Inspector General, soon to be known as the Office of Internal Accountability, there is one lieutenant, a police lieutenant, who runs that, but the rest are police performance audit managers and supervisors and police performance auditors. So all professional staff.
Okay, that's good. So there should be like less confirmation bias and things like that, being a third party. So that sounds good. Thanks.
Sorry, Captain.
Yeah, I think, thanks, Joe. I think what the judge was saying is, it kind of makes sense to me though, in going back over it in D2, right? Because it's speaking to the department as a whole ability to conduct all three of those components. You're specific about it in the next paragraph when you're kind of saying, hey, the inspections or auditing is up for, the supervisors or commanders. To me, when I look at it now, framing it as the department may inspect, audit, or search, the cell phones, because we're kind of grouping, I'm looking at it as it's the department's ability to do so. And when we get to, and I know we delineate it further down in the other subsections of D, but that one first paragraph does suggest like the searches is missing from it because we're talking about the organization as a whole.
Oh, okay. So yeah, is that, Judge, that's what you were, I got you. Okay. Sorry, I was a little bit, yeah. Okay, that makes
That
sense.
was
So
my
if we
point,
say
yeah.
inspect, audit, or search.
Search.
Okay.
Right, because we're not talking about individual supervisor or commanders. This is the organization's ability. The organization can do all three of these things. Now,
Okay.
who within the organization can do it, it'll
Yeah.
depend on their assignments or what it is that they're doing.
Understood. Okay. So if we say the department may inspect, audit, or search work cell phones and work electronic devices at any time, such inspections, audits, or searches shall not, and then we continue on from there.
And searches for the second one, maybe, Lieutenant. Such inspections, audits, and searches shall not be arbitrary.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Captain.
Yes, thank you. He has a way of explaining things. So the inspection plan. So this was one of the things that just went back and forth a lot of different places on this. So one of the things as noted was the idea of bringing the number of phones that were sort of touched, as SME Muir kind of talked about last time, touched, bring those up, while at the same time understanding that using these forensic devices, really diving into it is a little beyond the capabilities of the staff that we have right now, and understandable. And it may be a lot of work for not that much return, especially if we see the way we see a lot of these devices used, right? Especially some of these work cell phones where they're just in a locker, or making a few calls to people, asking about a specific incident, as a witness or something like that, and then not being used at all for any data or something. So what I did was basically bring in our Bureau of Risk Management and say that within 180 days of the policy being signed, to sort of to start and create a clock for when this written inspection plan would be done, that they would complete an actual written inspection plan and then review it at least every 2 years. And that the inspection plan would utilize thresholds based on data points such as, and then some of the things that Mac Muir talked about, number of citizen complaints associated with misconduct, uses of force. Another thing the department was interested in was the amount of data used during the review period as a threshold, to sort of whittle things down. And then to develop a list per bureau of at least 25 members that are assigned a work cell phone using these thresholds. And then from the list from each bureau, so the department has 4 bureaus, that the Bureau of Risk Management would, at the beginning of each quarter, randomly select at least 4 persons from each bureau, send their names to the deputy chief or deputy director, and that those people's phones would be inspected. So you'd be talking about at least 4 phones per bureau per quarter. So that's 16 per quarter that would be inspected at least. That these random inspections would be done by a member at least one rank higher than the person to whom the phone is assigned. So if it randomly hits on a lieutenant, then a captain would have to look at it, etc. That violations of the policy would be reported and handled pursuant to Department General Order M3. That's a hyperlink there, which is our misconduct reporting and investigation policy. And then giving out a specific end date for when the inspections per quarter would be done. So the Bureau of Risk Management would provide those random names at the beginning of the quarter. The inspections would have to be done by the end of the quarter. So I specifically gave that amount of time so that way there's not a thing like everyone knows, okay, January 31st is inspection day, right? You know, you wear your good clothes for inspection day, because it's sometime during that quarter. Your supervisor or something would say, hey, you know, let me inspect your phone. And it would go from there. Do have a little ability to, if a person is out on military leave or administrative leave, like they've been sick or injured or something like that for the entirety of the quarter, that we write that in, just because we are using random names, and sometimes we might hit on a person who was out for the whole time, etc. So keeping that, so that is kind of a per bureau, that sort of lighter touch. And I know Mac Muir, he mentioned 6 to 10. This actually goes a little bit beyond that. This is 16 per quarter, so that's higher than he mentioned. And understanding that, and that's something I think that probably overall, just because we're talking about per bureau, that it sort of spreads it out a little bit. But then kept in these random audits, and I use specifically audits by the Internal Affairs Integrity Unit. So this would be that the integrity unit would actually have to take a work cell phone, plug it into the forensic device, 2 of them per quarter. So that'd be 8 per year that they would pull, and that's randomly throughout the department. So beyond just this sort of threshold thing, is that there's always the possibility that your phone could be the one that the integrity unit says, let's take your phone, let's plug it in, deleted device information, all that stuff will come out, and then we'll see what we see. So kind of two-prong, a threshold and a random, to touch on both of those things that Mac Muir kind of talked about. And I believe, so we did take out, so there was some talk about the inspection and audit responsibilities that with this plan kind of goes away, right? That's funneled up into D4. And then the audit frequency, this was the Inspector General office, and took that out because that was instead, that is something that's probably going to either be the Commission's Inspector General or the OIA if they do audits of the policy itself. But this would be this sort of inspection plan is kind of the heart of what I rewrote or changed from last time. So any questions, comments, concerns, or suggestions, I'm definitely interested in hearing.
I think it's great.
Okay.
I feel better.
Okay. Yes, Chair, Chief of Staff Adwan.
Very polite. We haven't talked, and maybe not for this policy, but I am wondering if you would share your thoughts, and this is really for our OPD partners, about reporting out. So fantastic, you're going to do this. Will the Commission get to see it? Will the IG get to see? Like, how can the commissioners then keep track of your progress?
Yeah, great question. That was something that was on my mind. It was a little back and forth, and I think it's, well, my understanding is this. First of all, is that the Commission's Inspector General would get access to this, and this was something that she or her predecessor, her successors, I should say, would be able to look at, right, in their normal job of doing their inspections of the police department. Also, were any internal affairs complaints to come out of this, there's, as with the normal reporting between IAD and CPRA, that would be something that would also come through. But in terms of reporting, I think this would be something where I don't necessarily want to say that we shall report, because I don't want to necessarily clog up your calendar. On the other hand, I think this is something where the Commission, as you have with other things like risk management, the chief's report that he or she would give out every couple of weeks about crime or other things that you could ask that the chief present on, or that he or she bring, probably the internal affairs captain to present on this, or the Bureau of Risk Management deputy chief, because this is a risk management tool, just like those other things. So when you were to ask, I know there's been some discussion around asking for some of that risk management data, that sort of overarching look, that's kind of where I envisioned that report out to be.
Thank you. I wonder whether you'd consider including it in your or whoever is presenting on Thursday night, just to round out. It might come up as a question, but I wonder if can we be proactive and bring it up as a discussion, and also hear from the commissioners regarding, I don't want to drudge up the past, but we are still in the shadows of the Instagram case.
Yeah.
So it feels imperative that there is an understanding at least of when commission can expect, you know what I'm saying? And again, how this is one of the ways that we can start rebuilding public trust.
Right. And I think it's probably going to be instructive to discuss that the department was really interested and, you know, unfortunately, just in terms of time, but is still interested in the things that San Francisco is doing, you know, around this sort of automation and things like that. And that, you know, understanding that in their unit order, they do talk about that, you know, a report out on that specific program, which is much larger and goes through every text message that comes through their department phones or something like that. So, you know, understanding we're definitely interested in that. And I think it's important to say, yeah, that when we talk about bringing forward a lot of this risk management data that has been talked about, that would be the place. And like you said, proactively talking about that in the presentation or in the memorandum. Other thoughts around the sort of inspection plan?
No.
Okay. Let me see if I may. I'm just going to scroll here to see if I made any other. Okay, so I did note just one other note that came out is, you know, and this is more for an internal note as we train, but I'm going to keep this in there because it's good to remember that Mac Muir talked about, and I thought was really important, is to talk about, you know, previous things that have happened and why the policy exists, right? That people have run afoul. There are actions have consequences, and, you know, it's better to learn from the mistakes of others than to have to suffer those same mistakes as well. So I thought that made a lot of sense, and to keep that link in there. Yes, Chair Howell.
So, so this is just in relation overall, because I didn't see any component about technology development in the sense of, you know, moving towards monitoring and auditing software when as soon as it becomes possible to do so for Oakland, because I know SF has it. So I'd like to kind of see something there that kind of mentions that will be an idea that to move towards that, in the sense of, to me, it seems that would be, because you know how they said, you know, it focuses on words. So that would help us discover implicit bias, you know, when it occurs, because you don't usually know. You can't capture that unless it's in the moment.
Right.
So is there a possibility that we can add a section like technology development to where it's like, and we will move towards, you know, this software as soon as it's feasible? So
the problem is I'll say, so yes and no. So no, in terms of the policy itself. The chief was pretty clear about saying to me to not put that in the policy, specifically because we don't have the technology. All right. And he said, don't write in something that we don't have, because that causes problems a lot of times if you hold yourself to something that doesn't exist yet. Okay. However, and I'm overstepping just a touch here, but I think he will agree that we will both say in the meeting and then write in the memo that we are committed to investigating and finding an appropriate technology that performs the same type of function that San Francisco has within a reasonable amount of time. So doing things like, you know, and I know he kind of reminded me of some of the things that differentiate government from private sector, doing things like a request for proposal, doing things like searching out for an appropriate vendor, getting the bids, things like that we have to go through. And, you know, I understand where he's coming from, that there are a lot of rules around contracts and buying these things, but that I think we're definitely, that's something that we can commit to looking at and moving forward on in our presentation. Yes, sir, Captain.
Yeah, I was just going to echo Chair Howell that there is definitely a need to have a technology fix to this component that once we get to that level, we find the similar technology that San Francisco has, then we're not talking about 16 a quarter.
Yeah.
Right. And then we're really talking about having a way to proactively, before things reach to a level of misconduct and see, hey, are there these subtleties that are occurring that we could get ahead of, right? And talk about true risk mitigation. So I think the department is 100% energized and committed to finding that technology, just like San Francisco, but to put it in the policy becomes challenging for us because it's just not there.
Okay. That makes sense. Yeah. Okay.
But I do wonder, and this is maybe for way more for the commissioners. I've redone the agenda tracker, right? So I wonder, commissioners, if you guys are open to also saying to your fellow commissioners that we'd like to review this policy in 6 months or a year. And OPD also chime in, but let me test this out with the commissioners first. You don't necessarily need to reopen the policy, but you can certainly come back, touch it, and see where the department has gotten to with their discussions with Verizon. Just something that allows you, that lives somewhere, so that you commit and obligate yourselves to have a conversation in 6 months. What do you think about that?
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead, Rudy.
Judge.
I think that if we have the chief sort of report out as part of the chief's report, basically select a few or someone as part of the police department's update to have a report out on maybe some of the policies that we've enacted.
So you're thinking in general?
Yeah, in general, but we do some specific policies. You approved revised policy XYZ in June. Since that time, this has happened, and that's what's going on now, so that we sort of get rolling updates on the policies that we've enacted.
Right.
Not a long discussion, but a status report.
Yeah, and certainly the lieutenant and I have work coming up around policies in the future, and I think we were talking about the policies of policies, right? The schedule, but that's not a bad idea. And I guess I just want to figure out how I mark it so the commission knows to ask for it. But it might be nifty to do the 4 or 5 policies that came out of this Instagram case in 6 months to a year, to see how well they've done, what success looks like, how metrics, whatever data, especially because since risk management was really kind of new, and so what new data, what else? But I like that idea.
Ronnie, could you, when you're doing that, if kind of bullet points of the things that we might want to ask, or that you might want to ask, so we start collecting them, right? That's sometimes I find, and this is me and my work ethic personally, is that I know I'll leave things a little bit of procrastinate, and then it'll be sort of the last minute I'm scrambling to sort of figure out what happened, as opposed to saying, okay, these are the things that we're going to ask you about, so that we say, okay, hey, for the training, can you put the training into a shared folder, so that way we'll know where it is and we can pull it up when the time comes for a report out, for instance, or we can ask Dr. Grossman, hey, is there something that we, if the commission would like to see this data, how would you collect it, or how would you, so that way we're kind of, proactive about it.
Yeah. I think I understand your ask, Lieutenant. I'd love to kind of chat with you offline and see how to design that. I think what you're asking for is some kind of coordinated space between the agencies, but I'll check with you offline, and I see that director's hand.
Okay.
I was just going to say, Lieutenant Turner already has written in the policy that the Bureau of Risk Management will complete an inspection report within 180 days. So how about providing a copy of that report to the police commission? And that way you will be able to see, you know, any progress the department has made related to the policy.
Could we say it in the policy? And after the 180 days, present to the commission?
I
Or
will.
in the memo?
I think
In
we can
the
definitely say that in the
policy.
memo. That's one of the things where I don't want to speak on behalf of the chief on this one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Would you mind checking? I hear you, I really do. And I know the difference between memo and policy. And I know that memo is strong as well.
Yes.
Ever so politely, if you wouldn't mind checking. Again, the phones, the Instagram, and also San Francisco, I know we keep talking about their technology. They're not that much, like there were controversies there as well.
Mhm.
But if you would be so kind.
Yes. This is the
we
case
should,
where
yeah,
I
and we
have
should
lots
get at
of
least
issues.
annual reports, if not, some of them we may want to do twice a year. Others we may want to review annually, just to get an update. And Ms. O frequently tells us, that you guys pass all these policies and do all these things, but you never ask, whether they were implemented, whether they did any good or anything of the sort. So we should be regularly report, at least some twice a year, as I said, for Instagram or something, or related to technology, social media. We might have one report every 6 months. Others an annual report, just to say, it doesn't need to be a detailed report. Again, it's something the chief could do, or a deputy chief, or anyone can give that during the police, during OPD segment on the agenda.
And I like Chief of Staff's idea about, where will that issue live so that we can readdress it later to make sure that, things are progressing. Where would that issue about the technology, software, how could we keep that alive? Because that's the last thing to do, is out of sight, out of mind. Just keep it in the site somewhere it can live.
Yeah, and that's where I am envisioning the memo.
Okay.
Because it does come on your agenda. It's publicly noticed. It's something
Okay.
that we can go back to the agendas past and say this is where it was.
Okay.
So that's kind of where I see it.
I think the memo from the department, and I'll share with you again, Commissioner Howell, if you mention it in the meeting, I will follow up and put it in that tracking, that's the spreadsheet that we have when it gets like pending agenda items.
Okay.
And I'll put the date that we'll follow up for the meeting, but that way it's tracked from both sides.
Okay, perfect.
Okay.
We get twice yearly reports from the city attorney's office. Can sort of schedule it. I forget whatever it is they do, but they come about every 6 months and make a report to the commission on something.
So any other questions or comments about the policy before I don't want to take anything away, but I do want to sort of stop sharing so that way we can have view participants. Yeah, so I'll stop sharing, and that way we can all sort of speak about anything else.
And Vice Chair, I have no attendees for you and no comments, but time check, we're about nearly 7:30. If there are no more comments, I wonder if we can spend the last 10 minutes talking about next steps, whether this ad hoc feels, and I'd like to hear from the commissioners, whether you feel you are ready to present at next week's meeting. That means posting ideally by Friday. There's some wiggle room with a supplemental, but we should give people the opportunity as much time as possible to review this document. So commissioners, what do you think?
I'd like to hear from the chair of the ad hoc, and then I'd like to be able to comment.
Okay, as far as the policy development, I'd like to know how everybody feels about the level of control. Is this going to address what issues are we trying to control here? Just so we're trying to control the use of electronic devices for work purposes. And then does everybody feel that we have been able to capture the right wording and structure to control that use in this document at this point? Or do we need to continue to revise it? How does everybody feel? Does it feel like we're in control of this policy and its use or its implementation?
I think so.
I feel,
Yeah, 'cause I think we addressed all the issues. My main concern was just making sure that the technology piece doesn't get left behind just because, you know, the way the gentleman from San Francisco described it. I mean, it seems like a no-brainer to have that in Oakland too. So, because it would just help transparency, which transparency, you know, helps legitimize OPD and repair public trust, because everybody's like, okay, they're working with us. It's not, you know, and we're able to move forward and create a relationship that works for all stakeholders, all the community members, OPD, everybody can feel like their issues are included or addressed.
well, I think we've employed best practices here. We've had subject matter experts, but and also panelists from the community and from the department. I think we've given it our best shot. I don't want to talk too much about time constraints, but of course we do have this April 27th deadline, and I don't want it to appear as though we bum rushed this, because I don't think we did. And we certainly have made it plain to the public that they were invited to participate. And the fact that we're not having attendees is not because we did not make it available. I am concerned that, as with the risk management policy, when I reported last week, there was a reporter who wanted us to go into a sort of review of what we had done, even though, of course, everything had been posted, including the meetings that we had that were open to the public. So I'm only noting that so that the public that has not been participating in this, and for whatever reason, we may have to give a upfront reiteration of what happened and what were the changes, just to kind of get in front of the narrative, even though the reporter could have easily gone online and seen exactly what we did.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
And that might be something that Lieutenant Turner can write, so that it can be, it's a preemptive kind of, look, this is what we've done. And you're welcome to go check online, and I'm here to tell you this is what happened. So.
Rudy, my hand's up.
Yeah.
You want to respond first?
No, go ahead. No, go ahead.
I think that certainly we want to try to get out in front, but you know, I continue to maintain that people are going to complain no matter what we do.
And then there's that.
It's the walk on water thing. They say we can't swim. So I just wouldn't be too overly concerned about trying to walk through step by step exactly what we did, how we changed paragraph 1, we changed, B3, we changed C7, all of those kinds of things. That's the purpose of a red line document. Yeah. And it's been there and it's been made available to anybody who wants to go and see each and every change from the draft to where we are now.
Yeah. Wait a minute, even though I said that,
yeah,
he actually in print, in reporting, was critical that we
didn't do it.
We wouldn't respond.
Yes. Well,
yeah. And I know we can't, if that was his intent to create a kind of I gotcha, I just don't want Rudy to have to deal with that. That's all. I wanted to just bring it up.
Yes. And he's probably going to no matter what we do, he's gonna print something negative, likely. So if you
Any
try to meet
consolation,
that,
it
it's
doesn't
kind of
go
like
further than
it's kind of
Twitter.
like an extortionist or something. Okay, you know, you're gonna just keep on, and more demands will be made. I think you know, a general overview. Okay, that's one thing, but a detailed line by line, I just don't think we should.
No,
take the
something in between that. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm just throwing it out there.
Yeah, no, I'm not, and I'm not
It's gonna be an
objecting.
incoming.
I'm not objecting.
Yeah.
I do think too that one of the things we could do is what I was going to do last time, but when and which was basically to put up a one-page outline of what the whole policy covers. And so it's almost like a table of contents for the policy itself. You know, the heading and then the section the titles of all of them, and that could be on the screen so that people could see what the whole policy covers and what the subsections are. They can go to that, and it's very, very easy to do. Just pull out the headings and stuff. So that would be one thing if people want some kind of details to see. But I think, I mean, I'm agreeing with you, Marcia. Yeah, we try to head off as much as we can, but look at all of this reporter is not here tonight.
Yeah.
It wasn't here last week. And
Wasn't there for
could see every, you know, everything we deleted, everything we added, every explanation for it, and could do an in-depth report on how we got from point A to point B.
That's true.
So anyway,
I'm not disagreeing.
Well, I'll also remind you that so risk management was recorded because it was that public forum was part of our meeting. This is recorded. The lieutenant has gone line by line. I will promote this video as well. I'm happy to do that listing, but I think I heard Lieutenant Turner. It sounded like you were comfortable doing your 1-2-page memo to go along with this policy. Is that the case?
Yes.
Commissioners, would that also satisfy? I don't know if you remember Lieutenant Turner, every so often when he provides us with a policy, we'll do a quick memo that explains what you're looking at, the big changes that you've seen, the work that's gone into it. So is that, you want to do that as well?
That's perfect. Yeah, with the outline and that, I mean, it's all upfront, it's all transparent. Here's the work that was done. You know?
Yeah.
In good faith, we opened it to the public, and everybody was free to
Right.
show up if they had the time and wanted to.
Right. Okay.
I do also want to ask Mr. Farmer, as a member of the public, as an SME, as our rep here, what's your take? What else can we do? Thoughts? I don't mean to put you on the spot. My apologies.
No, that's fine. No, I'm optimistic from what I see. I think, like Lieutenant Turner pointed out, they exceeded the number of devices to audit than even Mr. Muir had recommended. So I thought that was a little, trying to be progressive as possible. I liked how Commissioner Howell pointed out, just staying on top of being able to integrate that technology if it's possible. But I agree with Lieutenant Turner that you can't put that into the policy before you can actually do it yet. That makes sense. And I like the idea how Commissioner Hartman Forte and you all are pointing out about just making sure that you review the policy as soon as possible. And like Deputy Director Settle pointed out, just put it in the 180-day frequency, when you're already going to do that. So, it seems like the ideas and concerns that have been laid out can easily be incorporated with, this plan going forward. So, yeah, I'm good. Thanks for having me. It's been great being here. And I'm really glad to see this policy happening.
Awesome. Yeah.
great, that's great. Can I make one other point about regular review as well? I think as the department comes out from under the NSA, one of the things that we want to show the monitor is that we have some systems in place so that things don't go back to the way they were before. So with regular review of policies and making sure that we are sort of on top of it, it should give the monitor some reassurance that it's not going to go back to status quo once you take your eyes off of it.
Right.
I think that's good for the that's good for the commission and good for the department as well.
Mhm.
And there were times, you know, when we were more in compliance, when the department was more in compliance, and it's like, okay, we got 3 more issues, 3 more things we got to complete, and then the next report, okay, it's 5, you know, 5 more things added because some things fell through the crack. So that regular system of reviewing all of these policies, the commission should insist on itself.
Well, I mean, at this point, I mean, if we're ready, we can report out at the next main meeting, which is what, next Thursday? Where are we at? I don't even know what day it is.
Yes, so it'll be next Thursday night, posting will be Friday. That would mean that I would cancel next Wednesday's meeting.
How's everybody feel? Ready?
I feel great.
Let's do
I
it.
agree. I think
do
we're
it.
done. We've done a great job. We've worked
Let's do
hard.
it.
We've done everything we can.
Yeah.
Could we, and so this is just gonna be a regular report out, with a request, to approve the policy. We're not gonna treat it as a public forum or anything, because we've had these public meetings.
Mhm.
That would be my recommendation. By all means, if you'd like to, I'm happy to work with you guys offline to talk about another way if that's how you'd want, but this is work done. You know, you take the full commission through it.
How busy, how full is the agenda for next week? It's gonna be a pretty full one.
Let me take that up with you once we
Yeah,
finish
yeah,
recording.
yeah, okay, all right, that's good.
Well, on that note, folks, let me stop recording if that's okay, if everyone agrees. Wish the public that are watching after the event a very happy evening or day. Hang on, stay with me.